Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about a subject that I really wanted to talk about, and it's something that really interests me, which is player housing in World of Warcraft. Player housing is where a player is able to have, own and customize his own house inside a game. You can see examples of this in games like Arcade and Final Fantasy, where Arcade uses an option called open world housing with specific housing borders, meaning pretty much every zone in the game has housing options, but some zones have a lot of housing area and some have very few housing areas. Final Fantasy uses something called instanced housing zones, I believe, where you have housing zones which are instanced but contains multiple houses in one instance. This allows the game to contain more houses in the same area, but it still allows you to have a lot of neighbors and it brings a form of socialness. Blizzard tried to implement something similar to player housing back in Warlords of Draenor, but it was a massive flop for several reasons which we'll cover later in this video. So what is the point of this video? Well, I want to talk about the positives, negatives and possibilities of player housing in World of Warcraft, how they could implement it and how they could make it very rewarding for everyone. I also want this to be a discussion and I want as many people to raise their voice as possible, since I'm not sure if I'm alone in wanting player housing or if the majority actually wants it. The more people speak up about it, the higher chances are that Blizzard actually listens. So make sure you leave a comment of whether you want player housing in WoW or not, and if you could give me a reason to back up your answer, that would be great as well. Since this video will only cover my point of view on this topic, and there's no way I've considered all of the ups and downs on this subject, but I have considered the ones I could think of. So let's all smash that like button and let's get into it. But before we actually get into it, let me tell you about NordVPN, who is also the sponsor of this video. NordVPN is a VPN that allows you to browse the internet more safely than ever before, as well as you can set your IP to different countries to watch country-restricted content online. For example, I use NordVPN daily to access more TV shows on Netflix, because the Norwegian version of Netflix is very restricted and contains like half the amount of TV shows that the USA version contains. You can also use NordVPN for a couple of life hacks, like when ordering a trip to somewhere else in your country, or ordering a vacation somewhere else to actually save yourself some money on flight tickets and bus or train tickets. A lot of websites selling tickets use country-specific rates, meaning that, for example, a flight ticket from Norway to New York might be very expensive if you're using a Norwegian IP to book the tickets, but if you switch your IP to Paris and book those same tickets, you might get them way cheaper. I truly believe that VPNs are the future of the internet. You are more safe, you can access more stuff, and you get life hacks. What more could you want? By clicking my link in the description, you also get a huge discount, so make sure you go check them out. Before we talk about player housing and how they could implement it, we need to take a look at their previous attempt and why it failed. Garrisons were player housing, but there weren't actual player housing. There were no real customization options, which was a huge failed opportunity if you ask me. One thing about garrisons is that sure, you could build a few different buildings, and with, for example, the arena building, you could have different statues on it, but in the end your garrison looked just like any other person's garrison. Why not take advantage of the selfie camera they had just implemented to the game and let us frame our selfie pictures and hang them on the walls? Why not give us statues of each raid boss we kill that we could place freely in the garrison? Why not give us the opportunity to paint our buildings with paint gathered from achievements, or even better, materials from the world? Another huge part about garrisons was its gold making potential, and how some people could make alts upon alts upon alts and make millions of gold with very low effort, which people did not like. I mean, having gold is cool and all, but logging in on 20 different characters to send out gold making missions, and maybe having 10 barns so I can go out and trap 10 animals per day for savage blood on each character, yeah, no, I'd rather not, thank you. The mines and the herbalist's gardens were things I personally did enjoy, because it didn't generate a ton of gold, but it gave you a little bonus, and it looked good. But it's absolutely not something I'd want in future player housing. Well, especially the mines, but having a small garden would be kinda cool. Another thing about garrisons is, except for the invasions, there were absolutely no reason to visit other people's garrisons, and you couldn't actually see them without getting physically invited over from the garrison's owner, so essentially there was no real reason for you to decorate your garrison, because only you would see it. Sure, having a nice garrison is cool, but does it really matter if nobody sees it? It's like driving around in an invisible Lamborghini, if you ask me. And it's not because garrisons were ugly and stuff like that, and you did have some customization options, but you didn't really have anything to make your garrison your garrison. Your level 3 garrison looked more or less exactly like any other level 3 garrison, especially because there was a certain meta when it came to the buildings to build as well. Give us player housing with more customization options and make each house different from the next, and make us able to make our home different than the other ones. So with that little garrison rant, I think I'll move on to player housing. Now when it comes to how to implement player housing, they could either do it like Arcade or Final Fantasy, or make their own system, which I have no clue how they would do, but basically if they do it like Arcade, they would have to implement housing areas in many zones, even the old ones. Imagine if you could have a house in Grizzly Hills, or in Nagrand, or Stranglethorn Vale, or whatever your favorite zone is. Now that would be epic, but it could also be difficult since Blizzard would have to implement a lot of housing areas. Also, it could give Blizzard a lot of spaced out content, because let's say in patch 1 they give us housing in one expansion's zones, then in patch 2 they give us housing in another expansion's zones, then in patch 3 another expansion, and so on. That would give Blizzard more time to actually find out where to have the housing areas and how to add it to the code. They could also do it like Final Fantasy and just make one huge housing instance zone, with for example room for 100 houses or 1000 houses in each instance. This would probably be easier to make happen, and it would be easier on their servers. They could also release a new housing zone for every expansion, so people could move their house to that new expansion's housing zone if they feel like it, or they could stay in the old zone. The main thing is that you need to have houses next to each other, and you need to have neighbors both to socialize and to show off your work. If you have spent hours upon hours building and customizing a really nice looking house, you should be able to show it off to people. It's also nice to just run around and look at other people's houses and just talk to people in game. Now let's take a look at all of the content player housing could bring to the game. First off, it could build upon the Warlord of Draenor woodcutting to acquire lumber, and introduce a whole new profession to the game, like woodcutting or lumberjack or whatever they want to call it. This lumber could be used to build buildings, and they could also rework inscriptions so you could process lumber into paper, and use paper and ink for inscription, meaning you have another gathering profession which is both used for building houses and for inscription. You can also then introduce a new crafting profession which could build specific furniture, and better looking furniture at higher levels or higher proficiency. This crafting profession could turn lumber into beds, chairs, tables, picture frames, and much more. You could also actually make use of the selfie camera by taking selfies and framing those pictures and hanging them on your wall for decoration. You could give us more reasons to run old content than just adding battle pets or mount runs. For example, some old raids could drop certain patterns for the new crafting profession, or drop very specific themed picture frames, or drop different types of paint, bed sheets, rooftops, and maybe even each end boss in raids would drop a statue of themselves. You could give people that are not interested in raiding, Mythic Plus, PvP, or World Quest something to grind for. First you need to build your house, which could be easy, but then you'd have to customize it and make it look good, and maybe even want to upgrade your house into a 2-story or 3-story house, or build a porch and all of that good shit. You could make use of battle pets and toy collections in other ways that you're currently able to in the game. For example, we already have chairs in the game like Nat Pagel's fishing chair, and we also have seat cushion toys, all of which are only used for cosmetics and kinda serve no purpose. But if you could put them in your house, that would be cool. Same goes with battle pets. Imagine if you could have a house pet. How cool would that be? Maybe you could also make a mini stables, like we had stables in Garrisons, but maybe we can make a mini version in our gardens where we could place our favorite mounts to show off to our neighbors. We could also bring back the seed system from herbs in Legion, but this time, instead of planting the seeds in the open world, we could plant them in our garden, and they would grow to a fully grown herb, and make it profitable, make it yield quite a few herbs per seed. You could give current professions even more depth, like leatherworkers being able to customize different color leather to put in beds and chairs, and blacksmiths could make something cool in the stables. Tailors could make specific types of cloth for you to customize statues or mannequins with, and maybe you can even dress up mannequins. The new crafting profession could make mannequins, and you could place your favorite transmog on that mannequin. That would make transmog farming even more popular. Another reason for player housing is that it gives Blizzard infinite possibilities on adding more gold sinks to the game, instead of adding extremely expensive mounts over and over. And although player housing might only appeal to a specific type of gamer, the ones interested in making their house look good will be willing to spend a lot of gold to make it happen. I mean, if Blizzard really wants, they can probably cash out on it through the in-game cash shop as well, but just me saying that probably gave me 50 extra dislikes on this video, so just forget about that. A big reason behind player housing, at least in my opinion, is that we have never really had a place to call home. We have gone from being travelers and adventurers to becoming literal heroes, to the point of defeating kings, demons, shadowy creatures, Lich King, Deathwing, the Burning Legion, and even old gods, and titans. We have travelled throughout Azeroth and gone to different planets and timelines, and we still don't have a place to call home. We had garrisons, which was our base in Warlords of Draenor, but there is a huge difference between a base and a home. We've also had class halls in Legions, which was also more of a base than a home. For me, it is unbelievable how we have accomplished so much in the Warcraft universe and still don't have a place to call home. Being able to settle down a bit in between the constant battles, just a feeling of actually relaxing. We're always chasing something, we're doing dailies, we're grinding artifact power, Azeroth power, and now anima power. We're defeating bosses left and right in dungeons, Mythic Plus, and raids. We're fighting the enemy faction, but we still don't have the ability to go home at the end of the day and just appreciate the beauty of Azeroth, which to me just doesn't seem right. I also think now is the perfect time to implement player housing, and with now I mean the expansion after Shadowlands. If we return to Azeroth and the land of the living after Shadowlands, I think it's fair that we get our own home, and we get to truly enjoy the beauty of our planet and enjoy the beauty of being alive and not dead. So there it is, player housing in World of Warcraft. Of course, this is probably not the perfect version of player housing in World of Warcraft, and it's just my description of it and my thoughts on how they can make it work. Do you want player housing to be a thing in World of Warcraft, or are you against it? Let me know in the comments down below. I do hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure you give that like button a high five, slap the subscribe button and ring the bell. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.